Welcome to another episode of Figure It Out Friday. Today we're talking about whether you should give your baby the father's name or your last name, or maybe hyphenate them, regardless of if you're married or if you guys are just boyfriend and girlfriend or if you're nothing. That's something that a lot of moms are faced with during pregnancy and right after birth, so we are talking about that, so keep watching. I'm Danielle Ford, the founder of Young Moms Club, where young moms go to empower themselves and design their perfect lives. And a viewer, Sarah, actually wrote, "Can you talk about the pros and cons of giving your son the last name of your husband or partner? For example, I am married and I really don't want to have to deal with my husband for the rest of my life, constantly suing and chasing him for child support. So what is the best thing to do in your opinion?" Okay, so I actually answered this question for Sarah, and I went back and forth with her a little bit, and I got a little bit more insight into what she was asking, a little bit more clarity. So I'm going to tell you now what I told her. Okay, so this topic is really about personal preference. So first I'm going to tell you my own personal preference, which is not necessarily right or wrong, but I have my reasons for it. And then I'm going to tell you some rules to follow no matter what your preference that are definitely going to apply to your situation if you have that kind of question of if you should give your baby his name or not. Okay, so I am personally kind of old-fashioned in some ways. Now, this might seem a little surprising because I'm super feminist and, go women and all this stuff, but as far as the last name goes, I feel like that's kind of what you should do, but that's only my personal preference. Now, if you've watched my other videos, you know that my ex-husband's not in the picture at all, and he's not around the kids at all. And even though we were married and I took his last name, even when we got divorced, I didn't like him very much, but I still chose to keep the kids his last name, and I chose to keep his last name as well for a couple reasons. One is I wanted to have the same last name as my kids, no matter what. I didn't want to be going into their school and saying I'm Danielle whatever, and then they're with their last name, and it being questionable or weird. I want to make sure that I have my kid's last name, and I didn't want to have to explain that to them either. Also, I personally know what it's like to have parents that couldn't decide whose last name they should give the kid, because I had a hyphenated name growing up. During my entire school year or school week life, okay, when I would go to my mom's house, I was Danielle Campbell. And when I was at my dad's house, I was Danielle Gracia. But legally, my name was Danielle Campbell Gracia. And that was ridiculous. And people used to make fun of me because my name had more letters in the alphabet, with my middle name included. And it was very confusing. It was confusing for me when I was little. My mom would tell me one thing, oh, your last name is this. And then my dad would tell me one thing, your last name's this. And it was I really didn't care. And I kind of lost my identity like that. So it was actually a relief when I got married. And now my last name has 4 letters, which is perfect for me, right? But I personally know that it would just be much better for the kid to have one name, regardless of whose last name it is. Now, again, I said that's a personal preference. If you have your own personal reasons for wanting your son or daughter to have your last name, and it makes sense, maybe you have a really strong heritage, with your family name and you want it to live on, or maybe you don't have that strong of a heritage and you want it to live on because of that. As long as there's a reason, for you to want to give your kid your last name, and it's okay with the father, I think that's no problem. But no matter what you choose, you need to make sure that you're not doing it out of revenge or out of spite. I've gotten past it. I kind of look back at my childhood, and I used to go, back and forth from my mom's and my dad's house every couple years, and my name would change all the time. So it was a little traumatic then, but I'm past it now. I kind of think it's funny. But at the same time, I still think it was really dumb for my mom to insist on me having her last name as well, which was just ridiculous. And she clearly did it out of spite and revenge. And although I don't hate her for it or anything, I still am kind of whatever. And I wouldn't want my kids to go through that and later look at me and think, why would my mom do that to me? So that's my personal preference, and that's kind of what I think you should follow. Again, I think the kid should have the dad's last name, but that's just me. But regardless, make sure it's for a good reason. Make sure you're not being emotional about it, because your kid has to live with it their entire lives. And it's going to be a pain in the butt for them if they ever have to change it later on. And they're just going to probably resent you for it, or at the very least think you're kind of weird. I hope that helped. If you liked this video and if you can relate to it, then please click like and subscribe to the channel. And if you're not yet part of the club, then what are you waiting for? Head over to youngmomsclub.com, enter your name and email, and I will immediately send you the 7 steps to being a kick-ass young mom and connect with you one-on-one. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.